I think I need a 12-step program. Welcome to No Excuses. Today we're going to be talking about something that's a little taboo. It took me a long time to actually admit it myself. And when I did admit it, I still don't like to tell people about it. And in fact, I've been thinking about making this video for the last week. And I've delayed. And so I'm just going to do it and get it over with and get it out there. Before we begin, I will say that I actually did not just ignore you last week. I filmed. On Thanksgiving Day. I had stuff done. I just couldn't get into it because of what was going on in my mind, which is what we're going to talk about today. So what we're talking about today is food addiction. Yes, I am a food addict. I can't deny it. It is what it is. I discovered this back in 2007. And I'll tell you the story about what happened. And what it was is I was actually at a restaurant. And it was a restaurant that I typically did really good at. I would go there and I would get the salad bar and I would eat a healthy salad. I would ignore the dessert bar, or if I went to the dessert bar, I would get the fruit off the dessert bar. And I had no problem. And one day I was there and I had points left or calories left, whatever I was counting at the moment. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go and get a small piece of cake. And when I say small, I mean it was literally an inch square piece of cake. And I was like, okay, I got this. This is fine. I can do this. So I carried this piece of cake back to my table carefully because, man, I wanted it. And I took a little bit of it because I was going to make this 1-inch piece last. And I put it in my mouth. And whoa, the angels sang. It was bliss. It was heaven. My taste buds were just like screaming with beauty. And I was there and I'm like, and oh my word, it was fabulous. And I ate that square piece and I sat there and I'm like, oh my word, I want those angels to sing again. I want to feel that bliss, that fabulous feeling of amazing food. So I went back and I got another piece of cake. And another, and another, and another. Because you see, I was trying to make those angels sing again because it was such a beautiful sound in my head. And I went home and I was beating myself up that night because I'm like, oh, dude, I just ate cake. Way too much cake. And I wrote about it in my blog that I've been keeping on my weight loss journey since 2006. As I wrote about it, I started to realize that this is a food addiction. That angel singing in my head is a high that I want. And once I hear that angel singing and I have that high, I chase that high. I eat more and more and more and more and more because I want to have that high. And I was like, oh, I have a food addiction. This is a real thing. I'd like to say that just knowing you have a food addiction is the solution, but it's not. I started to really ponder and think about what's going on in my mind. What's happening when this angels sing? And I started to realize that the angels sang on that first piece of cake, but piece number 2, they might not have sang as loud. And by piece number 3, there was no singing. And I'm being generous because I'm thinking by piece number 2, there was no singing. The high was gone. The high for me is in that first bite or 2. Yet the high is there and I'm chasing that high. So that was another big revelation. Number 1, I'm a food addict. Number 2, the high is only there for the first bite or 2. And I was able to beat my mind into submission. You know, hey, it's only the first bite or 2, you know, everything's good. And it worked for a while. But through the years, things happen. And the food addiction will just come back into my life, and it creeps back in. And all of a sudden, I find that I'm like chasing the high all the time. And that is what happened recently. It started slowly after vacation, and it just kind of built up. And I found myself looking in the kitchen going, what's going to make me feel amazing? What's going to tickle those taste buds? What's going to make the angels sing? And I would eat something, man, they didn't sing. So I would eat something else. They didn't sing. And I would just keep eating because I was chasing that feeling. And I had to come to that realization because until I realized that, I could not fight it. So we're going to talk right now about the ways that you can fight food addiction. Number one is actually recognizing it. I mean, I'm not going to go through the whole 12-step program that alcoholics do or anything like that, but you know, it works. But number one, I'm a food addict. That's the biggest step to combating it. I'm a food addict. And not just saying it up here, saying it out loud. Say it to your friends, to your spouse, to your family. I'm a food addict. The next thing is to actually avoid. If you have a trigger food that makes you go into this chasing of the angels singing, avoid that food. Just avoid it. I mean, if you're an alcoholic, don't drink. If you're a food addict and you're addicted to cake, don't eat cake. I know people that say they're addicted to sugar and they don't eat sugar. Carbs, they don't eat carbs. Avoid what you can. This is your choice though, because for me, I don't want a lifestyle of total restriction. I want sustainability. And for me, my addiction isn't just one thing. Like I can't just ignore cake. I can't just ignore chocolate. It's not just one thing. But if it's just one thing for you, avoid it. Just don't make the angels sing. Because once the angels sing, it sends you on a spiral. Now, as I alluded to, for me, addiction isn't just chocolate or isn't just cake. I have heard the angels sing with macaroni and cheese. I've heard the angels sing with a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And even breaking that down, I have one day been making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and I licked the spoon and whoa, the angels sang on peanut butter and jelly. And I find myself dipping my spoon in and eating peanut butter until I'm blue in the face because I've just eaten a lot of peanut butter because the angels sing and I'm chasing that feeling. The other night, we ate red beans and rice for dinner. And the first plate I had was so good. The angels sang. I wasn't hungry, but I ate a second plate because I wanted to hear the angels sing. I wanted to have that high. Red beans and rice. So for me, avoidance isn't really an option because, yeah, the angels don't sing for fruit and veggies, but that for me is not a sustainable life. So for me, avoidance isn't the biggest and best option. So for me, it is really a mind game. I need to, in my mind, recognize that I have a food addiction. I need to recognize and actually say, this desire is not based on need, it's based on an addiction. We were eating a sweet treat just last night and I ate it and I took a bite and I'm like, oh, the angels are singing. It's amazing. And I stopped immediately and I looked over at Jason and I said, the angels are singing. Now he knew that meant that it was really good for me. But I wanted to go back and I wanted to get another piece of that brownie with caramel. I wanted another piece. And in that moment, I'm like, I can eat the whole pan because that would make the angels continue to sing. But by recognizing it in my head, by actually voicing it to Jason, it made me stop and say, that desire to eat more is an addictive desire, and you don't need it. It's a mind game, because with a food addiction, and especially when it's just one that doesn't just strike for one food, when it's for anything, it's a mind game. You have to decide in your head that you don't want this addiction. You're not going to let this addiction win. Sure, I could eat fruits and veggies because the angels usually don't sing for fruits and veggies. But that's not sustainable for me. So I have to figure out how to deal with those moments when the angels sing, because that is life. And yes, that means that I may have to face my addiction every time I eat. And my Christmas tree just came on. And that's worth it for me, because I know how I felt when I was beating my addiction. The empowerment that I felt was amazing. When I was thinner, I felt physically amazing. Beating the addiction is worth it, and I need to remember that this is worth the battle in my head. The last thing that I would do is I pray. Over the years, my prayers actually had switched over to just, Lord, help me lose weight. But recently, they've gone back to, give me the power to control this addiction. Give me the power over my choices. I wish there was an easy pill for an addiction. There's not, because it's in our heads. This is a battle in our heads. It's not a battle in the kitchen. It's a battle in our heads. My name is Mary Fran, and I'm a food addict. But that's an excuse. It's a valid excuse, but it's an excuse. And there are no excuses.